Now I'm going to move on to sensory underresponders. These are children who don't notice or register sensations as much as others. Their nervous system reacts slower or less intensely to sensory input. Some common signs of sensory underresponders are maybe they don't notice their name being called, or hearing background noises. They may not feel pain right away. They seek out a lot of movement, so spinning, jumping, crashing, running around. They might appear tired, sluggish, or in their own world. They might need extra input to stay alert and engaged. They appear to always be in motion, and they have difficulties with impulse control, such as taking risks, interrupting in conversations, completing actions without thinking, etc. So for our sensory underresponders, we have two different versions, right? I explained a kiddo for these common signs. I explained a kiddo that kind of appears tired and sluggish. So that's one version of our sensory underresponders. They kind of look like the kids that are just always, sitting in the corner, not really responding to their name, always just looking tired. They're slow to be moving, to do activities. And then we have the other version of sensory underresponders where they're just craving inputs. They're always moving. The kiddos who crave that sensory input, they're go, go, go all day long. And they want more input throughout the day. Sensory underresponders have a large cup that often require a lot of sensory input to be filled. So that same example that I gave for our sensory overresponders, where their cup overfilled the second they got to school and it was loud, maybe all of that sensory input that a sensory underresponder got, maybe their cup is only filled 25%. So they require a lot more. They have a big cup, lots of liquid need to be filled in. All right, some strategies for sensory underresponders. We want to provide a child with an outlet to gain craved input, so implementing movement activities, heavy work activities. What I mean by heavy work activities is what I was talking about for proprioception. So heavy work activities are anything that might be pushing or pulling or resistance against the body. So again, same thing with sensory overresponders. We're helping to regulate their nervous system. For underresponders, we're also helping to regulate their nervous system during times of when we see them maybe really being unable to sit still. Proprioception will help to kind of regulate, give them that input still, and still allow them to attend and focus. Spinning is a big one. Kids love to spin. We have a few swings here, and some of my sensory seeking or sensory craving kiddos that I see will be on that swing, spinning like crazy. So that's a really great one to help fill their cup. And then upbeat music and bright lighting. We want to incorporate short, intense, frequent movement breaks throughout the day. So animal walks, that's a really great activity to provide that heavy work I was talking about, but also give them the input that they need. Maybe jumping activities if you have a trampoline, or hopping like a bunny or frog jumps, outside time, etc. And lastly, tying both of these two strategies together, we want to make sure that we create a routine that incorporates a variety of sensory input. So we definitely want to provide movement activity after sitting down for a while, maybe having some outside time after school, heavy work activity before dinner. So whatever we find out works best for your kiddo, we want to keep that consistent routine so it helps them to keep their cup from overfilling or filling their cup as well. All right, so for this slide, I just wanted to put a list of signs of dysregulation versus signs of regulation. So for signs of dysregulation, they may be hyper, moving quickly. There might be louder, faster talking, switching between topics quickly, unable to sit still, covering their ears, running away from loud noises, avoiding places that are busy or loud, inattentive, lack of eye contact, seeking out movement, difficulties with impulse control, engaging in risky actions, frequent mood changes, emotional outbursts, eloping, which eloping means running away. It could be running out of the classroom or running out of a different room without saying, I'm leaving. And then adverse reactions to small changes. And then signs of regulation: calm, attentive, eye contact, emotional balance. So, they're able to take on things that happen to them. For example, they drop their food on the ground. They're able to kind of persevere through that, pick it up, and keep going. You might see like a regulated state throughout the day. So they may not get upset often, or they may not look tired often. They're kind of maintaining that emotional balance. They're receptive to information given to them. So what I mean by this is if you're able to give them directions, okay, go put your shoes by the door and we'll go to the table to have a snack. They're able to put their shoes by the door and go to the table to have a snack. Clear thinking, so they're able to make choices based off of what's happening in that situation. Problem solving and flexibility. So they're able to, if they drop their food on the ground, they're like, okay, now I have to pick it up, put it on the plate, and throw it in the garbage. Adaptive stress response. So again, when things are happening to us, we're kind of able to persevere through it. Energy balance. So maintaining kind of good energy given the situation and the context, right? So for our sensory under responders versus somebody who's regulated, they're able to they're not bouncing off the walls, or they're not extremely tired. They're kind of just awake and able to go through their day. Engagement in activities, and then again, problem solving and flexibility. All right, I wanted to list a few more general strategies. So for first, we definitely want to identify common patterns and triggers. So we want to identify when your kiddo is the most sensory seeking throughout the day. So is it after they eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Is it right after school we're noticing them running around and seeking out that movement, or having that increase in mood changes, or even being after being in a busy environment? On the other end of it, identifying sensory triggers, so loud noises, bright lights, flashing lights, tight clothing, anything that's causing them to feel distressed. We definitely, again, want to do co-regulation before self-regulation. So the more we teach a child how to work through those big sensory experiences and feelings, the more they are going to learn how to work through it independently. Practice calming strategies when your kiddo is in a regulated state for generalization of skills. So even though we want to model those calming strategies when they are not in a regulated state, we also want to teach them how to get those, how to implement those calming strategies independently. And the best way that they're going to learn is when they are calm and regulated, so that they can take in that information and generalize it to the next time they're feeling distressed or dysregulated. We want to implement a sensory diet learned by a skilled occupational therapist. I'll go further about a sensory diet in the next slide. Providing proprioceptive input, so tight squeezes, pushing, pulling heavy things. Burrito wraps, so sometimes I'll recommend having the kiddo lay on a blanket and rolling them up like they're a burrito, or even same thing after they get out of bath time, wrapping them up in a towel tightly. Doing animal walks. We want to be responsive to our child's cues. So if we notice that we're implementing a sensory activity, we want to make sure and identify that it's working for the kiddo. And if it's not, then we want to find something different. So if that input that we're implementing right there is causing more distress or more dysregulation, then we kind of want to stop what we're doing there. We know that it doesn't work for that kiddo, and we're going to trial something different. And then the goal is to not change the size of their sensory cup, but rather help them to develop the skills to give their body and nervous system what it needs for their daily life. So we may not always be able to change the size of the cup, but we can rather help them fill and empty their cup so that it remains just right for them. So we don't want it to be too little. We don't want it to be too full. We want it to be just right. And then for sensory diets, so it's actually not anything to do with food. It's a personalized set of activities designed to give a child the right type of sensory input their body and brain need throughout the day. So just like some children need snacks between meals to keep their energy steady, many children need sensory snacks to help them stay calm, focused, and organized. So what's included in sensory diets is a variety of calming and alerting input throughout the day. So examples of calming input are mindfulness, deep breathing, environmental modifications, calming music, deep pressure, etc. And then alerting input is jumping, crashing, exciting music, brighter lights, anything that's kind of unpredictable and is helpful for alerting input. Sensory over responders need more calming input, while sensory under responders need more alerting input. So when we use a sensory diet, when we implement a sensory diet, we put in a variety of the calming and alerting input based off of the kiddos' patterns throughout the day or their sensory triggers. And when we do a variety of this, again, it helps to fill their cup but not overflow it, and it also helps to empty their cup. So that calming input helps to empty the cup. Alerting input helps to fill the cup. A sensory diet is unique to every child and may require adjustments as we learn what works for the child. And lastly, the goal of a sensory diet is to help a child's nervous system to stay balanced. We don't want them too revved up and we don't want them to shut down. By integrating these activities into daily routines, so morning, school, playtime, bedtime, children can better learn to regulate their emotions, attention, and better be able to learn. All right, and so some key takeaways from this presentation. A child is unable to learn unless they're in a regulated state. So this is a big one for all of our kiddos who go to school. If they are having sensory processing challenges, we want to make sure that we, here at More to Say, we collaborate very often with the school teachers to make sure, again, that we're providing that sensory input and those breaks that are needed so that they can maintain regulation in school and therefore they can learn. But it's also helpful for learning in daily life activities too, right? Not only just calming strategies, but maybe we're teaching them how to become independent in dressing. If we are dysregulated while we're dressing, we're not going to learn the steps and sequences that are needed in order to dress. So we always want to make sure that they're regulated before we do any type of learning. Sensory and emotions are tied. So the nervous system is, a part of our brain. And so when we have difficulties with processing sensory input, we're going to have heightened emotions. And it creates an environment, sensory processing and sensory input creates an environment where kiddos feel safe, comfortable, and motivated. Sensory diets and strategies are individualized and what may work for one child may not work for another. We always want to be responsive to our child's cues and adjust as necessary. And the goal of sensory processing is to help your child navigate the world successfully. The goal is to not fix the sensory processing or their cup, but rather provide the right sensory strategies to maintain regulation throughout the day.